Goddess of grace, be with us now. Where we have known privilege, let us live humility. In our struggles, may we discover compassion. In power, may we begin to practice relatedness. As a community, may we be a safe harbor in a world that is often harsh to difference. In this time when we have had to come face to face with injustice and cruelty and indifference, may our presence begin to be the source of healing. May we be a healing force for equity and justice. When people come, when our children and grandchildren come and ask us about how we lived in these times, may we tell them stories of beloved community. For the work of building the beloved community is as pressing as it ever was, and it may give hope to the generations who come, who continue to pick up this work. May our stories be a map for them to follow. Amen. As you hear the stories that are to come, I invite you to bring your own stories into the conversation, to have them remind you of moments when you've experienced belonging. I've experienced these moments since I've arrived, not often in the same deep, soul-shaping way of the stories that you're about to hear, but in team meetings, when we've taken time to really greet one another, when the creative energies have flowed between us, when we feel like we've done some really deep listening and emerged from our time together as a true community, where we've been heard, known, loved. See, beloved community doesn't always have to be magical, but sometimes, as you hear, it is.
Unitarian Church of Annapolis. Hi, I'm Shantae Daniels. Good morning. I'm a member of the Unitarian Church of Annapolis. I'm in shock and in awe that I was asked to talk about my relationship with the beloved community at UUCA. I can't tell you what UUCA has meant to me, and definitely is my beloved community. I've been a member of this church since 2013. And from the first day that I walked through the doors, I was received with love, kindness, and so much respect. At the time, the church was looking to increase their diversity, and I guess I fit the bill, but it wasn't about who I was as far as my ethnic or my heritage background. The people that I met were authentic, they were real. They allowed me to be vulnerable at times when I was going through personal things. And that's what a beloved community allows. It allows you to be vulnerable. It allows you to be joyful. It allows you to be all the things that you want to be in your life. And this church has been the most gracious in allowing me to be who I am and to be a part of the church. One of the things that I remember so well is being asked to be a worship lay leader by Reverend Fred Muir. To me, that was a distinct honor. And of course, at one time I thought, well, why is he choosing me? But it didn't matter why he was choosing me. He chose me. He chose me for the spirit that I brought, for my insight to the difficult and challenges of being a human. And I've met some wonderful people through my experiences at the church. I had the opportunity to be on the ministerial search committee. And being on that committee, it just brought me even closer to the church. I was someone that was selected by the congregation to make a choice for them, to be the one that they wanted me to be a part of the team, to pick our next minister in partnership with Reverend John. So a beloved community allows you to be all the things that you want to be. It allows you to make mistakes, but those mistakes we are bound to learn from. So what does it mean to be in the beloved community? It means that you can come here and you can be authentic, you can be vulnerable, and you will still be loved. And yes, we don't always agree, and we may never, ever agree, but it's okay. So thank you for this opportunity to let you know what a beloved community means to me.
My years at the Lighthouse Shelter. As you know, UUCA is one of the founding members of the Lighthouse Shelter. And it was there I was working with one of my dear friends, Devon. I've changed his name. I have his permission to share his story. And we were at the front desk together. And after about 6 months or so, he shared his life story with me. He grew up in Annapolis, was unmotivated in school, according to him. He struggled, and he got in trouble in the streets during those years of the drug wars. He ended up spending a couple years in prison for selling marijuana. When he was released, no one would hire him. No one. So he picked up odd jobs here and there, met and married a beautiful wife and had 3 children. And lo and behold, just as he was considering going back to the streets to support his family, the Lighthouse employment training sessions came along. And as a result of those, here he was sitting next to me because they saw his work ethic, his job skills, and his eagerness to learn. I was so touched that he shared his story with me. The trust he had in me, knowing that we were going to spend 5 hours together every week after that. He often told me that I was his role model for dealing with the residents with stern kindness. That meant a lot to me because as a retired person, it meant that I still had value and could be of service. I will always value the point that both he and I saw and heard each other.
Hi, I'm Jane Kerrigan, and I want to share with you a time when beloved community was absolutely evident in my life. I worked for Camp Beagle one summer and was working doing science experiments with a young man. He might have been maybe 7 or 8 years old, and we were working trying to resolve a scientific question very intently and not even realizing that his mother was across from us taking pictures. I'm really lucky because I have a picture that I think of as taken at the exact moment that I realized that this was my beloved community. You see, at that moment, we suddenly resolved something and looked at each other in amazement. I was amazed as much as he was amazed. And in that moment, I realized that I was part of his beloved community, along with his mother. I had helped him come to an understanding of some scientific problem, but he had engendered in me an enormous, an enormous understanding, an enormous excitement. And that is beloved community.
And my name is Ken Apfel, and Carolyn and I joined the church about 15 years ago. And we love the church and get deep, deep joy from the church. But I've got to tell you that there have been times when I've had struggled mightily here. But in retrospect, some of those moments of struggle have led to greater clarity to me about what's really important. That's what I'd like to talk a little bit about. I was approached several years ago to play a leadership role, actually several leadership roles at the church during some complicated times. Reverend Fred was starting to get near retirement, and there was a great deal of uncertainty and unhappiness about where we might be headed. There was also a lot of distrust. And frankly, people were not listening at all to one another, given that distrust. I have to admit that some of that talking past one another was coming from me. At some level, I just wanted to be blind to the dissonance. And I came to realize that I was not, and the church was not even close to living up to the beloved community. And that hurt. I must say I was bereft and starting to feel cut off. But what was clear when I really opened my eyes to all this was that everywhere I looked, there were church members who wanted to rise above, who wanted to listen to one another, who wanted to engage together, to pull us forward together. A lot of hands pitched in over those times, including mine. Part of those efforts back then was establishing congregational conversations designed to foster deep listening to one another about church vision and governance, about race and healing, about where we needed to go in terms of our ministry, about the future. Indeed, Heather just asked to have last week a congregational conversation on the future of our building facility, which was important and powerful conversations. Deep listening has become an essential component of my faith. And last week, Reverend John said to us, and I quote, "What we pay attention to grows. What we pay attention to grows." I try to pay a lot of attention to deep listening. And I know that we as a church are trying to mightily to move forward on active listening. And that has led to more and more joy. All that's brought me much closer to my church, to you, and to my faith. In effect, as our covenant says, to live more for one another, to really support each other on our journeys. That's moving us closer and closer, both individually and collectively, to the beloved community. I love my church.
When I was 30, I went to serve as the youth director at First Parish in Concord, Massachusetts. If you don't know Concord, the town or the congregation, it's the home of Nathaniel Hawthorne and Louisa May Alcott, and the Unitarians, Ralph Waldo Emerson and Thoreau, David Thoreau, both of whom at some point in their lives belonged to First Parish as members. So I was the youth director there. There's a lot that I could say, but on this particular night, we were doing a lock-in. I think it was the first lock-in of the year. And it was offered on an early winter night, not quite the Christmas season. And there's no snow yet, but the air was that New England crisp. And the town lights on the center green kind of sparkled the ways that the stars did above us. And on this night for our lock-in, we were going to make our own pizza. And it was a time when the sort of disparate youth groups of the congregation, there were about 75 youth, we had their high school youth, were being invited in for this time of community. And we thought pizza would attract them. And so I was there standing by kind of the main entrance and welcoming youth through the door. Some of these youth I knew well because they came to our weekly Sunday night sessions, and other youth I'd seen pass through the halls or at gatherings when we were planning our youth trip to El Salvador. And there was this young man, older youth, who came and said hi. And I said, "Welcome, so glad you're here." And he said, "I'm Jonathan. Can I come in?" I said, "Yes, please." And I couldn't quite tell if he was a senior or maybe junior in high school or what his story was. But I said, "Why don't you come in?" And I checked with some of the adult volunteers who were gracious enough, actually 5 or 6 of them, to spend the evening and the whole night with us. And they said, "We don't know who this is." And so I said, "Hi, are you a part of First Parish or the youth group?" And he said, "No." And I said, and I actually think he said, "Is there a place that we could talk?" And I said, "Sure." So I pulled him into a little side, sort of small conversation room. And Sven, one of our adult volunteers, would go by the door periodically just to check that I was okay. And this young man shared. He said, I came to the town. I came back to Concord. I went to high school here. And he said, "I don't know if you know, but one of my friends from high school committed suicide last year." And I had heard about this because one of the things that the parish had told me when they hired me was that in their public high school the year before, there had been 4 suicides of students. And they said, "Here's the thing about these kids. They just need love and attention and less pressure and more joy. And we think the thing that might keep them alive is community." And so I said, "Oh, is one of their funerals today?" He goes, "It's tomorrow." And he said, "I came in early and I thought I'd see people. I thought I'd find my friends around and we'd be able to share stories of this person. And I can't find anyone. And I was walking all alone and I didn't know where to go. And I saw the lights of your church on. And I thought that maybe I could come here." And I said, "I'm glad that you came. This is a place that you can come." And I thought for a minute what he saw, how in the darkness our church was lit and its door was open and its lights were on, and there were people, welcoming people, and how that drew him in. And he shared about his friend that he had lost, about sort of feeling like he hadn't found his way in college, coming back and being alone. And I invited him to stay and make some pizza with us. And he said that's okay. He needed to go home and eat with his family. I was so glad that he came in and that I had a chance to hear him. And I was so glad that we had a church that offered such an open and broad welcome that he felt like he could walk in with a troubled soul. My dear ones, you might wonder where to find beloved community. Beloved community can be found almost anywhere on this earth where there's love, welcoming hospitality, a willingness to show up in faithfulness, to build community even when things are hard, to listen and to trust people who you might not have thought you had much in common with, and to learn from them, to show up in each other's lives like your intentional family, and to understand that though we may not think alike, we may love alike, and surely we could love each other. If you wonder with whom you could build beloved community, it might just be, in fact, it likely is the person right in front of you. May we go and build beloved community with one another. Amen. Blessed be. I'm going to invite us now into groups of 4. We're going to invite you into a breakout group. I hope that you will accept. In the breakout group, 1 or maybe 2, or if you're very succinct, perhaps 3, people will have the opportunity to share a time when you felt a deep belonging, a sense that the person you were with or the people you were with knew you who you are as just a wonderfully imperfect person, quirky and particular, and appreciated you for it. Because I think in that moment, you might have just been in the beloved community. May you go and share your stories of beloved community with one another.